Now, here on The Angle, we actually believe in spending cuts. The government has grown fat and way too happy with woke. And that includes the Pentagon, if they keep focusing on things that are actually going to harm our readiness instead of focusing on what we need, a military ready to take on our enemies. Well, thankfully, some in Congress agree with that. And during a markup of the National Defense Authorization Act, Republicans, including my next guest, proposed changes that targeted diversity, equity, and inclusion programs.
To my colleagues' questions about whether or not I intend to use this hearing to go after the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and the critical race theory in the military, the answer to that question is unequivocally yes. I view this not as a wedge issue, not as divisive, but as remedial. We have to go and remediate the bad things that have happened as a consequence of this embrace of radical gender ideology and radical race ideology.
Now, one of the amendments Gaetz proposed was to get rid of the Pentagon's chief diversity officer. Well, it passed, but he wanted to go a step further and eliminate federal funding for all DEI training. That amendment, he says, failed after 2 Republicans joined Democrats to defeat it. Gotta name names. Joining me now, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, we reached out to those 2 Republicans, and we're going to name them, Congressman Bacon and Turner. Congressman Bacon's office responded in part, the amendment would have totally cut all diversity training for the military, which is unreasonable. All service members should know that racism and sexual harassment are not tolerated in our military. Oh, that's a weak response. Your response to that?
Well, as I explained to Congressman Bacon in the committee, we always have standards in the military that don't allow people to be racist or harmful to their fellow service members, and none of those standards would have changed. The question is whether or not we ought to have these chief diversity officers, and Laura, they're making as much as $183,000 per year. Compare that to a private in the Army or an airman or a sergeant working for our military. Tell you what, if the chief diversity officer is what we need to win wars, maybe we should send them all to the front lines in Ukraine, like now. Get them to Taiwan. But, of course, that's not the case. This dilutes our readiness. I'm glad that the structural office has been eliminated, but you always have to follow the money, and that's why I'm going to continue to pursue efforts to get all of the funding removed.
Yeah, getting results. I mean, people talk about these issues and freedom and all these wonderful ideas, generic concepts that are important, but what are the results that are Republicans bringing home? And I think you're trying to actually show people, we've done this. We've cut this. This is bad for readiness. It's bad for recruitment. But the Republicans have got to get on board here. On these woke programs, we've gone through a lot of them on The Angle, the huge celebration they had this month at the Pentagon. Everything but military readiness was discussed.
Yeah, I mean, while China's focused on AI, we're focused on LGBTQ AI+. And it is important for Republicans to understand the damage this is doing, because every major institution the Democrats have taken over, from the Department of Education to Justice to pop culture, they've destroyed it, and we cannot allow that to happen to our military. Our service members are patriotic. They are not extremist. They are not racist. And the problem really lies with some of the senior leadership, the woke generals.
Some of these people are horrible.
Not
God bless their service, but they're just their views on this stuff is going to just drive a lot of more traditional Americans out of the military. Now, here's what one of your colleagues said at the hearing today on the Democrat side of the aisle. It was yesterday.
Critical race theory has been weaponized as a political tool. Running away from history does not help us have a stronger military. If we want a stronger military, we cannot run from CRT, and we must embrace DEI as a central part of how we lead.
Well, she's right. Critical race theory has been weaponized politically, but it's been weaponized by the left to get people to believe that as a consequence of their immutable traits, they are naturally oppressed or an oppressor. And people in the military, minorities in the military, have come to me to talk about how divisive this is, that the whole reason there's commonality in training is the sense that you are one unit, one team. And we went from be all you can be, one of the greatest slogans of all time, to this embrace of radical gender ideology and radical race ideology. And you're right, we should not pass another authorizing act for this military that does not uproot all of the wokeness. We know where to find it, but it takes political courage, Laura, because you've got corporate America and K Street all pushing for an embrace of this radicalism.
What are Republicans in the majority in Congress for, in the House, if they're not going to do stuff like excise that ridiculous spending? What are they there for?
This was the core covenant that we had with our voters to get in the majority, and it seems as though far too many are willing to violate it.
Congressman Gaetz, thank you, and we'll stay updated on that.